All right. What's going on, folks? Let's see. Mike. Yeah, man. It's Free for All Friday on a Thursday. That's how we do. Who else we got in here? Ed, good to see you. Dan, good to see you. Jason, what's happening, man? Let's go back to Jason real quick. Jason, is this your first time on the live stream? I don't recognize your name. Anyways, it's good to have you. I'm glad you're here. Everybody else that's showing up, make sure you say hello. Let me see who's coming on here. Benny Ballistics, good to see you, buddy. Tony, always good to see you guys. No, we're not shifting Free for All Friday to Thursday. I will be not available tomorrow, so we're going to do this on Thursday. And besides Brook, I was wanting to have him on. He was available today, so we took advantage of it. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July. Hopefully everybody I'm talking to still has all their digits. Good, Jason. John, what's going on? John Hopin. John, I definitely have seen you in the comments on some of the videos. Good to have you on the live stream. Folks, if you didn't notice already, one of the things that was made aware of was opening up basically like a channel on Telegram. I think that'd be a really cool platform to be able to use. We won't get censored on there. That way we'll be able to shoot out, especially when we're talking about gun related stuff, whether it's discounts or items that are just coming in. Again, when we get new gear in, whether it be rifles, pistols, things like that, and you guys will be the first to see it, even before as we're putting it on the website. Peter, what's going on, buddy? I did all the pyro for the city here in the 4th. Good. Well, that's cool. That's quite the task out there. Well, folks, we'll go ahead and get started here in just a second. I will, for those of you that don't know Brook, I'm going to introduce him, and then I'll let him talk a little bit about himself. So first of all, I'm really glad to have Brook on. For those of you who don't know, he's an instructor of ours. And again, number one, Brook's definitely one of those guys I just love hanging around with. Him and I talk a lot about, I don't know, just kind of getting the psychological aspects when it comes to training. I think we're kind of like-minded in that area, and we're going to explore some of those today. But again, Brook, he's a humble guy, so I'll talk him up more than he'll talk himself up. Former Ranger, current LE law enforcement, as well as former Ranger, current LE. Hey, babe, on your phone, I'm getting all that audio through my. I was wondering what was going on there. Someone was watching something on their phone. Anyways, again, former tactics and firearms instructor for a federal agency. One of the most proficient guys I know. We love having him on staff. He's one of the best instructors that I know. And again, we're lucky to have him. And I wanted to get him on here so we could talk a little bit more in depth in some of the main discussions that we have. But anyways, Brook, introduce yourself. Tell everybody about you.
I think you summed it up.
I figured I would.
Back in the 90s, I was in 2nd Ranger Battalion, and that kind of started down this career, I guess. Got out, went to college, blasted into federal agency. I got just over 20 years with them. Spent the last 8 years in Advanced Training Center. Like you said, teaching firearms, tactics, special skills. And then prior to that, I had 10 years active with the tactical team. Various positions. Pretty much the whole time I've been in that agency, I've been responsible for training at some level. Obviously, in the beginning, it was very low level. Other times, I was responsible to ensure everybody was getting trained to a certain standard. And now where I'm at now, we teach instructors of certain firearms, active shooter, a couple other mid-range carbine, a couple other topics like that. And then we teach our pre-deployment for our agency going overseas. So a lot of different angles looking at training from student to instructor of instructors, if you will. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that Brook and I always talk about is again, we'll talk a lot about mindset and methodology behind the training and the approach that we take and just the thought process behind a lot of stuff, folks. again, I always go back to the fact that what I intended for this when we started to do in YouTube, we started this channel. I threw this channel up probably 3 or 4 years ago. I posted like a video or two every now and then. It wasn't really an avenue that I was planning on going down, to be honest with you, just because I didn't want to be associated with a lot of the junk that's on YouTube, either people that are talking about things that they don't know about, or they don't have the experience to talk about those things, or that, just shills. But I decided that I wanted to, definitely during COVID, and we kind of went heavy into that. I thought I started thinking more that it was a good platform. And hopefully what I wanted to do was hopefully set us apart from some of that nonsense. And the same thing goes with training in general, right? There's a lot of training out there that, and a lot of people providing training that, A, they don't have the experience to back up, B, they don't know what they're talking about. That in its own right can be a bad genre to be a part of. And Brooke and I talk a lot about those things. But, the big thing here is going back to this channel, what I end up doing, and I realized early on, like I can produce some training videos and things that we talk about training, but that's just not what brings people in, right? People like products. So we started doing product reviews, or I did a product review and I saw, hey man, these things are getting a lot of hits. So that's what I'm always trying to do. It's a bait and switch for you guys. So I'm throwing you some products, things that you guys like. We talk about those things, but hopefully I'm throwing in some nuggets of information. And I also want to entice you into getting deeper into, I don't want to just be someone that tells you about a product and say, hey, or you walking away with, hey, Gary bought this. Gary has this experience. He recommends this, so that's what I'm going to get. What I want to do is give you the mindset and figure out why I came to that conclusion on that, right? So that's really what it's about, is hopefully making you fall in love with the process of just thinking about all these things, right? Being of a tactical mindset, and fall in love with training as much as products, because that's what always matters, and that's, again, those are discussions that Brooke and I have all the time. And I thought, if we can make them as organic on here as we normally do, just talking about them, which is always a challenge, I think that would be a really good avenue to go down. So anyways, one of the things that Brooke and I are, one of my favorite comments that Brooke has is, we don't want to be guilty of entertainment, which we see a lot of out there, right? So, I just gotta leave it there, Brooke. What do you go ahead and go down that road a little bit?
Well, you want people to show up and actually leave with skills, not come and have us tell them, hey, jump through this hoop, this hoop, this hoop, this hoop, and they leave and they're like, well, I jumped through 5 hoops, but I didn't get where I can go tomorrow. It's funny you say entertainment, that you don't want to go there with all your jokes, but no, it seems like the market is flooded with people selling an experience, which isn't a bad thing if that's what you're buying. But if you think you're buying training, you should be getting some value that you carry off the range, that you can either replicate, you can add to your training regiment that you do, add to your knowledge base, whatever. But there should be some value when you leave the range.
Sure.
Other than, man, I had a really good time and I heard some really great either war stories or not, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, there's so for instance, I've trained with some of the really big names out there, and I can tell you that was some of the worst training that I've ever had. There was one in particular where one training event I went to, we actually went as a special forces company. Our entire company went down to Moyoc, and there was this big name guy. We had probably 80 people on the firing line, and we were doing ready up drills, just ready up, which nothing wrong with that. Ready up drills are good, right? But at the same time, it wasn't anything that we couldn't do back home. And way this was laid out, you have 80 people on the line. Only a very small portion of these guys were operators. A lot of these were, support guys, S1 guys. And the big name guy was sitting in the back. He was literally in the back of a pickup truck with a bullhorn, basically saying, ready up. And then you had like 2 guys out of 80 people walking up down the line as range safety officers. And I'll never forget the guy next to me. We were shooting at 5 yards. We're doing ready up drills at like a 3 or 4 inch dot. And that guy couldn't hit that 4 inch dot to save his life. And as a guy walks by, he looks at his dot. He's like, "Hey, man, you need to tighten up your shot group." As if, it's just, hey, you need to perform better without going into, but that's what they're used to. And that's what they get paid for. And because of their name and who they are, because they're really good at marketing, they get away with that, as opposed to really making sure that people are walking away with that are, genuinely improved in the skill set. And as you guys go along with this, if you throw up if you have a comment or a question, just throw up like a cue, something. And we got Summer back here working. She's working hard back here as our producer. So she'll throw up a comment or a question every now and then. So keep them coming, and we'll throw those up from time to time. But the point here is what I really focus on Paramount, what's really important to us is that every single person gets individual attention, that every single person is walking away with something out of that.
That's one of the things that I really enjoy working for you and your company is, even when we have a small class, you still have the high ratio of instructor to students. I don't think I've been to a class that we haven't had a comment at the AAR section at the end where somebody said, "I didn't feel like I got any attention." Almost everybody acknowledges, or even like that's the thing that they caught the most was, "Hey, I felt like I had an individual attention. I felt like it was almost a private lesson," which that one's difficult to do, but everybody gets some kind of attention. I've been to several trainings, the same thing you said. I was at one, and I think we had max of 24 on the line, one key instructor. I got more out of the guys next to me that had already been through his courses previously before he got big. I got more instruction understanding from them than the 2 comments he made in a week of training with him. But I think that's the big thing of that really small student to instructor ratio, where we can push the guys that are driving fast, and we can coach the ones that need a little more attention, like the guys missing the dots instead of suck less. Like, here's some things that would help you suck less.
Dan says, "I've seen one training company that lists how long their instructors have held their CCW license, as if that is a qualification to be an instructor."
Just meant they hadn't been arrested yet, I guess.
Yeah. You might as well say, "I've owned guns for 15 years." So yeah. There's a lot of crazy things. The other thing, I have a lot of heartaches with or a lot of issues that I would love to go into depth about the NRA, and I think the NRA is been one of the biggest problems with a lot of things when it comes to gun rights and other things like that. I think there's a lot of corruption, a lot of wasted time and money in the NRA. But with that being said, the other thing that I think they've done a major disservice to is the training side of firearms, tactics, or anything else, where anybody can go and get, spend $200 and get a pistol or rifle instructor certification. That's a joke. I remember I was actually asked by a federal agency to get my NRA rifle or pistol instructor cert. So I went and did that. And it was a pistol. It was a pistol instructor cert from the NRA. So I went there. We went through the training. It's bad trainers training worse trainers is really what that is. And it's a couple hour block of instruction. You go to the range, do a couple things here and there. It's not effective, and it's terrible. And it really irritates me that that's held as some sort of high standard, and people post that like, I'm an NRA certified instructor here or there, whatever. But there was a lawyer in one of our courses, in this course, and he clearly had never shot a gun. When he got up there, he had he was a small dude. He was shooting a 45. He was like shaking. He literally was like so nervous just holding a firearm. He just wasn't comfortable with firearms to begin with. But at the end of the day, he left with an instructor certification, So, I think there needs to be a much better vetting process. And I don't know what the answer is. One of the things I would love to do eventually is if we started getting to a point where we were branching out and even franchising, making sure that was done at a very controlled level. I would love to be able to offer multi-day legitimate instructor certifications where you needed certain certifications, certain qualifications to even become or be considered an instructor. Because that's the other thing too, folks, is I think there's the application you can teach anybody to turn a bolt, but it takes some experience to be able to be a mechanic that fixes a car. And that's really being able to diagnose what's going on and then be able to use those things in the right context, because that is one of the major issues with tactics, firearms application, everything else is context, right? How that is used. And we'll get more into that too. We'll talk about a little bit more versus, choreography versus being able to actually problem solve in tactical environments.
I think the problem though is NRA has been and I'm use this loosely, the national standard. So I know dealing with local law enforcement agencies, their administrators want some kind of credentialing for whoever they're going to pay money to, which is, I think the trend is training, and I'll hit that, or is changing, and I'll hit that in a second. But because it's a national standard, that's what are you NRA certified? Because there's no, like you said, there's no governing body, there's no vetting process. There's not anything out there that does it, and some of the other organizations, I'll just say it that way, that do some of that, it seems kind of inbred, or the good old boy system, like, hey, Gary's taken care of me in the past, or I know Gary from back when we were in the military, whatever the case is, so I'm going to vet Gary as this great instructor. I'm going to bring him out to our conferences, and I'm going to push Gary, and kind of flourishes that way. So there is no real way to vet good instructors, or to even to thin out the herd. There's no minimum standard other than shooting, what was it, 8-inch pie plate at like 5 yards with 10 rounds with whatever gun you had.
Well, and it's okay if you don't pass that either, by the way.
Well, you can retest till you do pass.
That lawyer didn't pass that, I know, at least 3 times, and again, he still walked out of there with a certification. Yeah. So,
but when you're looking to try to have credentials that an agency will hire you to teach their agents and officers, it's hard not to have that one in your book, because that's one of the boxes they check. And I think in that case, it's probably about liability.
Sure.
Not necessarily good training. On the other side is agencies picking guys off social media because they have a really dynamic, great, entertaining feed.
Yeah.
And they either wanted to get pictures with them or whatever the case is. I went to one class, and that talking with that instructor, that's one of the jobs he had. That's how he's like, hey, how'd you find out about me? What was your process to select me over anybody else? And they're like, we saw your Instagram feed. I'm like, well, that's good.
Yeah. Well, and that's the and that's one of the things that I've always struggled with marketing this business too. So, it's definitely puts you in a predicament of, hey, do I spend more time marketing because I know we're good. I know what we do is really, I know the product that we produce, but do I spend more time on marketing, and more energy on marketing? And, because at the end of the day, a lot of these folks that really shouldn't be teaching, but they're doing extremely well, is they're good marketers, regardless of it's definitely trying to figure out that balance of, because I can go out there and I can shoot videos, and we can make all these whiz bang shooting videos or whatever else. Man, I've been so resistant to that, because it just, the process of it almost disgusts me to some extent. Folks, the reality is anybody with a gun can sit out there, and we can do enough takes to make something look really good, and that's what they do. But what you're not getting is any context out of that. You're not getting, application of these things. So, it's definitely, it's just definitely something that you have to consider and think about. And I don't really know the answer to it, to be honest with you.
They are very good marketers, though.
They're very good marketers. And that's the thing is, like, what I've learned over the last couple of years, and again, even through YouTube, this whole getting into YouTube has been a real learning experience. And I think very beneficial for me, just to be able to see how to do some of these things and how to interact and how to market at a national level. Because I've learned so many things through YouTube, whether it's lighting and video, audio, things that I now have come to enjoy that I hated for a long time. So it's been a growth experience for me. But and what I've come to accept is, like, that's what we got to do as people that are providing good training, are providing good products, that, we have to beat them at the marketing game too. And I just told some of our instructors that actually enjoy doing some of this stuff. We're going to be likely expanding down to Southern Virginia, where we got some guys they come up to teach as it is, but we want to open up a offering training down there. And one of them is extremely good at marketing, right? He's really good. He likes doing Instagram, all those things. But on top of that, he's an excellent shooter and has a lot of the experience to back it up and all those other good things. And, the thing that I told him is, at the end of the day, what we realized, and I got this from Gary Vaynerchuk, if you guys are familiar with him, is, basically we need to be a marketing company that happens to provide really good firearms and tactics training too. Because if we want to beat everybody else at the game, or I don't even want to say beat anybody at the game, if we want to make sure that we are getting the clients to sustain this business, that's what we got to do. It's just the reality of it. And that's tough. I know it's tough for me, and I know just your personality, that's tough for you. So.
It's a little tough.
Mhm.
You're lucky you got me sitting in this chair.
I know. Weird thing is you're standing up. He's not very tall, guys, but
I'm just overshadowed by your big personality.
Yeah. So let's see. What is one flaw you see with people coming from other instructors or things they do?
I'd say that one of the examples is I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it seems to be with the younger shooters, it's obviously because they're tapped into that, but they're doing some weird technique, or I don't know. Weird technique. I'll leave it at that. And I'm like, how's that working out for you? Because we'll look at your target. And I'm like, well, where'd you pick that up? And they're like, well, I saw it on YouTube. So we'll provide them, hey, try this. Try this technique. And they're like, but the one I saw from YouTube, I'm like, so you paid to come to our class, give us a shot, try it out. It usually does work better based on our prior experiences and time teaching. But those are the guys that are hard to convince that they've seen it on YouTube and it looked like it worked on YouTube for that guy that's been replicating that over and over, and it wasn't working for him, and he was still kind of stuck on it. That's the big one I see, is stuck on something they brought there that wasn't working. Like, don't bring something to class that's not working for you thinking we can fix whatever that other technique is. I'm not, even if it's a valid technique, it's not the one we're teaching, and I don't know how to correct you on it or improve it. I mean, generally we do, but some of the techniques are just kind of gimmicky. Give you a really good example of that. So I'm a little ADHD, so I apologize. We're diverging a little bit. 20 years ago, I'm in the Border Patrol Academy shooting, and I'm hitting low left. A lot of instructors on the line would shift slide sights. Mine just said, hey, just aim right shoulder. And that's how I left the academy. That was not the proper technique, and thankfully I got to where I was going to work, and like, hey, try this. And we worked on trigger, a lot of repetition, a lot of dry fire, and we straightened that out without having to aim right shoulder, and having to try to remember that while under stress and not missing. So anyways, bring that back around, is sometimes those techniques aren't fixable. You just got to have the right one.
And the other thing too, what a lot of those things are lacking is context too. So you can have, you need the right technique for the right situation at the right time, right? So that's one of the things that really irritates me that I see on YouTube, and this is another example along those lines, is all these videos of guys walking forward to a target. They're walking and advancing on a target, shooting it as they go. It looks really sexy. It looks really cool. The easiest way to shoot on the move is walking forward, obviously. But it has almost zero civilian application. It does not gives you no tactical advantage to move toward a target. Now, if you were on an entry team, you're doing CQB, you're, again, military law enforcement, and you're entering a structure, you are clearing that structure, so you're going to move forward no matter what. That makes sense. But as a civilian, as a defensive shooter, we can't move backwards fast enough to make it worth anything, right? I can't make myself a small enough target quick enough by moving backwards. And on top of that, other than a range, it's a sterile environment. We can't just walk backwards while we're focusing on our sights. So that's a recipe for disaster. So both of those are bad techniques, walking forward and walking backwards while we're shooting targets. So, and one of the things we talk about, obviously, the real advantage is moving lateral. So as soon as we can get that in, but again, all these videos that you see, people running forward, shooting on the move, going towards a target, tell me the tactical advantage of that. There's not one. And so that gives another good example is use of cover that you see on videos and the lack of actual use. You're not effectively using cover, and you're exposing so much of your body the way that they're using cover that is no longer cover. All it is protecting your legs, which I don't want those shot, but I really don't want this part of my body shot that I'm exposing the most. So making sure, and that's one thing that we constantly talk about is every technique that we teach in our courses, we talk about mindset, methodology, but making sure that we're putting the context of why we're using this and why this works and under what circumstances these techniques work. Because again, there's lots of good techniques, but if you use the wrong technique in the wrong situation, no matter how sexy it looks on TV or on YouTube, it's the wrong answer that gets you killed. Yeah. What other questions or comments we got up there? Bummer. All right, good. I don't know, Tom. A couple of people texted me about that, about how Hogan is getting rid of that. I'm also, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was expecting what happened in New York to happen, and that was they were going to go back and reformulate some new laws and regulations that are going to get challenged at the Supreme Court level again. Yeah, so, all those things are what it are. I don't know. You still require 16 hours of training. I don't know if that's been challenged anywhere as far as a training requirement. I disagree with it. I don't think you should be required by law to exercise a constitutional right. However, you definitely, and that training is really bad, by the way. So two things. Number one, a responsible gun owner should be getting training as much and as often as possible, at least a very solid basis of training, not only the safety portion of firearms, but the actual application of again, the use of cover, being able to draw from concealed from multiple positions, being able to identify targets, being able to really understand what it means to scan and assess a situation and or target discriminate.
Legal application of deadly force.
Absolutely. Definitely the legal side of that is important as well. All of those things, and then actually running people through real world scenarios, right? Folks, and I always talk about this with our advanced concealed carry courses. We do an extremely in-depth course that's, we cover everything from gear, we put you in different shooting positions, we run you through multiple scenarios. And people don't realize how limited their capabilities actually are, especially under stress. And that's usually only under the stress of, maybe a buzzer or your peers watching it. And it's easy to fall apart, right? So you don't have a good basis of instruction and you don't have a good basis of knowledge. You don't even know what to do. Most people, that's the problem is they don't even know what to do in 99% of the situations. Do you know how to draw safely from the car while you're seated or from inside of a restaurant booth? Could you engage a target? Do you know when you should engage a target and when you shouldn't engage a target? Are you really under stress clearing your backdrop? Are you going to shoot through that bad guy and then shoot 3 kids behind him? Under stress, can you even identify those things? And those are the things that we really focus on. We focus more on making you a thinker than we are necessarily making you a shooter. As soon as this thing starts working, the brain shuts off for 99% of the people. And that's the real training that you need. Not necessarily, the 16 hours they're going to give you with the nonsense that they give you. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, the fix though would be having a solid fundamental base that you make all the manipulations, shooting portion, subconscious. You can push all your brain power to assess the situation, evaluate the backdrop, evaluate your exits, all that stuff that's going to happen at the same time or should be happening within close proximity of each other.
Yeah, and even knowing when to draw. Like, if your startle response is to go for your gun, that is wrong 90% of the time. All right, we should be moving to cover. We should be doing other things before we get to actually pulling that gun. Because if you have a gun on you, and again, your immediate action is go for a gun, that's how you get dead real quick. So, there's a lot of things that you got to put into context. Do you consider CCDW classes as training? I personally don't. I mean, it depends on the class. I mean, I'm sure there are some states that offer good information. But it's not training. Most of it is going to be familiarization at best. I'm not saying that they're completely worthless. I do think they're completely worthless constitutionally. But that's my personal opinion on it.
There's probably some out there that have good value. It's got instructors that really care about it. They're probably trying to make a difference. So they include all those things: the safe weapons handling, the appropriate times to use it, the understanding of laws in that state specifically. That's probably a good thing you're going to get out of that class if it's a good instructor, and then plus your ability to demonstrate those basic fundamentals, because that's all they're testing in that day, whether it's a pie plate at 5 yards or. I don't think they're putting you under stress or anything. No. I haven't had to do that, thankfully.
And most of them are only like a 6-hour class. I mean, a lot of those classes don't even require any actual range time. And like Brooke said, I would say that 99% of the curriculum, just the curriculum, is probably garbage. But what touching on what Brooke is saying is, I'm sure there's instances where there's good instructors that are putting more information out there, that are providing, that are passionate about making people passionate about training, and again, that's always my goal is with all our videos. It might be a gun review or a flashlight review, but what I'm trying to really instill in people is, what's more enjoyable than the gear is becoming passionate about the training, loving it's like a martial art. I mean, at the end of the day, right? So when you become passionate, for all you jiu-jitsu guys, or if you're really into CrossFit, we always know jiu-jitsu guys and CrossFit guys because you're going to tell us right off the bat. But and that's that same passion for the science behind it, right? Is really what we want people to get to. That's what I really hopefully am trying to sell people. Buddy D, the problem is not the first trip; it's trips 10 through 20. Because once you take the first class, you will be back. I have yet to meet one alumni that was a one class and done Paramount student.
Yeah, he's coming from South Georgia, Alabama. I think he's talking about looking for training down there.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end of the day, buddy, he says South Georgia.
Find a range and host us.
Yeah, so that's
guns will travel.
Yep. We're set up to be mobile, and we'd love to get some people down there. Summer has family in Georgia. We spend a lot of time down in Georgia, so that's actually a real possibility. With that being said, we have people flying from all over, whether it's Georgia, whether it's we have people from California. Last course we had a whole family here from Colorado. We're worth the trip, and we'll set you up and make sure that we give you all the information you need to make sure that you can come for a weekend, have a good time, and but yeah, we definitely want to start building some relationships with some ranges and some other places, and go do some traveling. That's for sure.
You can just show up. They'll sell you ammo and give you a loaner gun to go with it. So.
That's true. Marathon runners. Yep. That's the thing. That's how you know you're passionate about something, is the bumper stickers on your car. A marathon runner, BJJ, or CrossFit, they're going to have some sort of stickers on their vehicles. There's no doubt about it. What?
The apple cider restaurant.
Yeah, apple cider, cider press grill. It's hard to duplicate real stress when you get tunnel vision. You're hearing low. Sure, no, absolutely. But again, what I will tell you is, we will put you in scenarios where you have to make decisions that you've never had to make before, and learning how your mind works under stress is going to get you a lot farther than you think. No, there's no way that we can really duplicate the stress of somebody shooting at you. With that being said, between the pressure you put on yourself, performance anxiety, all of those things, it's definitely, if you don't keep your mind working through all that, which again, our courses require you to do that. And if you can keep your mind working and problem solve with a gun in your hand, then in our courses, you're going to be able to do that to a very much better extent than not having to attend our courses when bullets are flying or something's coming at you, and keeping yourself immersed in that environment too. Take our med course, take our handgun or tac carbine courses. All those courses, again, prepare you a little bit more every time. And Mike is on here, and there's several other guys on here that have been to the same courses literally 10 times. They've been to our level 1 10 times. And Mike's one of the best shooters that I know. I mean, he's a freaking phenomenal shooter, and to seeing him grow the way that he has over the years of coming to our courses it's pretty gratifying. Matt says, I traveled to train with you guys. Love the area there in Winchester. Miss you guys. Remember Brook from the carbine class I took before I went overseas. Yeah, Matt, you need to get up here again, man.
Yep.
We love having you, buddy, and we appreciate you coming out to come see us. Matt, you're down in Virginia Beach, right? I believe he's down in Virginia Beach. Congrats on, yeah, man. Thanks. We're about we're less than 1/100th of the way there. Still got to hit the million mark. But no, we appreciate every single sub that we get. We appreciate the community that it brings. It is fun to be able to talk to people. And, it's fun when people call here and I answer the phone. They're like, are you that guy? I'm like, we got a little YouTube channel, but people are surprised that I answer the phone, or Summer hands the phone off to me. And that all those people that we've touched through the video, I don't know if that sounds the way I want it to, but all the people that we have reached through video, has surprised me. But, we're literally, I think right now we're hitting around 50,000 views per month. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little less, but around 50,000 views a month. So that's 50,000 people that are being exposed to us, and it's cool, right? And not just because it's me, but because again, we have guys like Brook and all the other guys, and that's one thing that I want to do more is get some range time videos going, and definitely bring some more of our instructors on here because I'm like 1% of Paramount and probably not the best part of it, to be honest with you. Summer's the best part about it, but she's back there. We keep her off camera. I know it's much easier to watch when Summer's here on here. Yeah. Yeah. So what else?
I didn't write it down. You hit something that
so
me, but
one thing that I wanted to bring up was choreography. And this is something that Brook and I have talked a lot about. And this was one of my biggest frustrations teaching CQB or room clearing for a federal agency, where, I always think it's funny, where I was teaching before as an instructor for a federal agency. When we were teaching room clearing, it was ran by a bunch of pre-9/11 guys. And I will tell you right now, there's definitely a mindset from guys that retired pre-9/11. And then those that actually have been to war. And the main difference is understanding the limits of the shelf life of knowledge. I'll put it that way. I remember going into training, getting ready to go to Iraq with the initial invasion. And we were doing a lot of CQB. At the time, I was still an infantry guy. I was a sniper team leader. I was in a scout platoon. We were doing a lot of CQB training. And I remember the people teaching us, and they were military instructors, but they were, hey guys, this is the right way. There was this mindset of this is the right way. It's the best way we know. And we know that the Navy does it one way, the Marines do it another. Those are all garbage. Don't listen to them. Or somebody would bring up a different technique for maybe, clearing a doorway or something like that. And they're like, shut up. This is the best way. And that mindset is prevalent amongst pre-9/11 folks. What we realized going into Iraq and Afghanistan was our tactics weren't as good as we thought they were, because whether you realize it or not, you end up setting up your tactics to meet your training environment constantly. So your tactics aren't as good as you thought they were. B, no matter how good they are, the enemy adapts. And those are the things that I think post 9/11 people have a better grasp on than necessarily pre 9/11. So, when they teach these things where it's like, hey, the number one man going through the door goes this way always, or this always happens, or you should end up in this part of the room, or this, it turns into choreography. And instead of learning tactics and being able to adapt to an environment and being able to tactically assess that environment and make good tactical decisions, you're constantly looking for the right answer, the right footwork. Because the other thing is, when you're not doing what they want you to do, now you're also trapped in this bubble of this, you can't make a decision, right? So it's like, oh God, should I go this way or this way? None of it makes sense to you, by the way. That's the other thing. Like, none of it is making sense. This doesn't make sense. But every time that I get to this portion of the room, I need to step over here and be this far away from the wall, or clear a red zone or dead zone in this manner. So it turns into choreography, as opposed to having 4 or 5 or 10 thinkers clearing a structure. You have 4 or 5 dance moves going on. People that are just dancing through there and trying to get their footwork right and trying to please the guy behind them to make sure that, he gives you a go, So, yeah, I don't know what other context you want to add to that.
Well, so that's building templates for a specific terrain that you trained on.
Yeah.
What I've found is guys that learn that way, which we did a lot of patrolling in my time in the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen from growing up in the agency that I'm in, dealing with local agencies, they get a lot of templates and they do it on the training house that they have. So they have the answers for that structure. Like, they could literally flow through it with their eyes closed or the lights off, whichever, right? But you move that terrain.
What about both? Eyes closed and lights off?
Only if they have really good shoes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they're getting this template.
Yeah.
And they've got it down. They look slick. It's super fast. And then you change one little thing in there, adapt the door, change a wall, move a wardrobe, whatever the case is, or invite them over to another, hey, we got this smaller training venue, you want to hit that? And that first run is garbage because they're trying to go through this Rolodex, trying to find the right template to throw at this house, because they've never had to work at looking at what's the shape of this terrain, what are the angles of attack, angles of exposure that I need to address with an angle of attack, those kind of concepts. And they're slower, and all the martial arts guys out there and the fighting guys will understand Hick's law, but having multiple answers slows them down trying to figure out the right one versus, hey, what do I need to address in the shape of this building?
Yeah.
And you see that a lot with local agencies that unfortunately are stuck in their one training venue, and they rep it from the same door every time, instead of making things, hey, let's hit it from the other door. Let's start inside the structure and work it out, whatever the case may be. But because they have those templates set for that terrain, and they're always, and you watch it, especially in new guys, senior guys can adapt it. They have enough templates that they can, all right, this looks similar to this, or maybe they've evolved and they recognize that template technique, even though that's what they teach, isn't how it's working.
Yeah.
But you see the young guys get stuck, or the inexperienced guys get stuck because they're like, I haven't seen this template. Oh my gosh, the doors. When I walk in, it's the actual front door of a big house, and you have the kitchen, hallway, stairs, 2 bedrooms right there, and you're
It's
like,
supposed to go to the far corner, but there's not, because
a
it opens
corner.
up to another room, or
it's a pony wall, or whatever the case may be. And
yeah.
So that's the problem with that, is that template solution to it versus this is the terrain, these are the areas of exposure that I need to cover.
Yeah, it ends up being, a tactical flow chart. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a terrible way to conduct military or any sort of defensive operations. If this happens, this happens. If this happens, this happens. There's so many different variants, and you got to be able to think on your feet, and again, make those decisions while under stress, while 50 other things are happening, and that's the key. And that's what was always, when we would do operations, when I was in special operations, when we would do other joint operations with regular Army, and we'd have guys that are going through a house and clearing a room with us, and they were like, oh my God, you guys do this so fast, and like, It's because, we realize that if we're the third man in and it doesn't make sense to go to this corner or do this, as we're doing this free flow CQB, we don't. We go to the next room, or we do, we can see what's going on and we make those decisions because, again, we're all about the problem solving, not making sure that we're hitting that template, as Brooke said. So, that's the real key. And the same thing goes with defensive shooters. All these things apply, man. And that's what's so frustrating to see what's being taught most of the time is having, it's just one constant startle response after another. That's what most of this is being taught. It's just like, oh God, you're just doing whatever, as opposed to having real context and being taught to think from the beginning. And that's one of the things that we talk about constantly in our courses is like, starting off day one, level one in the classroom. I'm like, folks, I'm not here to teach you to shoot a gun. I'm here to teach you how to win a firefight. And if you start your training with that mindset and understanding what you're really doing there, it's not about, it's not about just being able to function with a gun. It's being able to problem solve and to fight. You just happen to have a gun in your hand. And yeah, we need to use that and apply all the fundamentals and everything else. And all of that gets in there. But I'm telling you, there's an evolution that occurs in a person when they go in with that mindset. If they're taught from a static range, like you would see with the NRA instructor course or whatever else, if that's what their exposure to firearms is from the beginning, it takes so much work to overcome that mindset, there on out. Learning, teaching people that have never done it before to shoot on the move, understanding why we need to shoot on the move, understanding, close quarter shooting with a pistol. They're like, oh God, if you have somebody shoot from the 3 position or from the 2 position, and they've never done that before, that stuff just blows their mind. Because guess what? Everyone that you ever might have to shoot, they're not going to be 20 feet away from you or 10 feet away from you. Stretching your arms out and going to full extension could be giving your gun to somebody. And just making sure that people understand some of that stuff. Yeah. Now, I always, Brooke and I always joke about this. And for those of you that, if you don't know me, if you've never been to a course, I joke around a lot, and we have a good time on the range. And I think that's really important too, because I also think that people learn when they're having fun. Because I also think that we can have fun and we can provide some entertainment, as Brooke would say, but at the same time provide real training, right? I don't necessarily think that it is a mutually exclusive. Those are mutually exclusive, right? I think we can definitely do both. And I think that's really important to me, and definitely important to loosening clients up, especially clients that aren't used to being around guns before, realizing that Gary's not going to yell at them unless they do something really stupid. And don't get me wrong, we don't let safety slide in under any circumstances. But I will tell you, somebody that is nervous and you haven't put the work in to make them feel comfortable, they're more likely to commit those safety violations than they are, because again, you're freeing up their mind a little bit from the worry of, the menacing Gary or the menacing Brooke over here, to concentrate on where to keep their muzzle pointed. And, that's how I always start every course, is like, hey folks, whatever you're doing today, your only job today, when everything else is, you're just completely overwhelmed and you don't know what to do. Your only job is to keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction. And if you're not shooting well, that's our fault. That's not your fault. That's our fault. Mainly Brooke's fault, but it's, somebody's fault other than your own. And we really do try to focus on that. What about, throw that comment that Buddy said earlier up there. I like that. I didn't get a chance to. Yeah. So there is no perfect tactical strategy. Absolutely not. There are good decisions and bad decisions though. And that is what I, and there are fundamentals that we can use. And one of the biggest thing is the use of cover. Like I always think about this all the time. Like, even when I was in the military, yeah, we were told to use a cover, but I don't think it was stressed nearly enough, the importance of use of cover. And it's definitely not stressed enough in teaching civilians. And we spend a lot of time doing that. And we spend a lot of time applying that. And there again, and the reason that we spend so much time on that is because even under stress of that buzzer, people are using cover effectively all day long, using the correct techniques for that. But then as soon as that buzzer goes off, they jump out from behind cover. And there's just been too many people killed, law enforcement and military killed within arm's length of some really effective ballistic cover. And it's a shame. And it's because that hasn't been really kind of drilled into them enough. What'd Mike say? Providing some level of fun is important. We're not required to be there, and we paid to be there. You guys, absolutely.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
It also puts, like, if you think adult learning, there's a emotional attachment, or maybe not attachment, but there's an emotional attachment component of retention of information. So if they're in a comfortable place or a little more at ease, they're going to be more likely to retain the information that they
100%.
paid for. Versus that high stress, they're just worried about not getting yelled at. They're not going to retain anything that we provided over that day, or any other course that I've ever been to that we got yelled at.
Yeah, and you know what? They're not going to come back either. You know, part of this is easing people. Some people need to be eased into, because you guys know, I mean, jokingly, I end up, you'll be in the middle of doing something like a mag change, and I'll start screaming at you. But that's not, day one, level one, because it unnerves some people, even though they know I'm joking. But again, providing real instruction in an environment that you want to be in, I think is really important. And there's so many elements there that we talked about, that just a lot of, there's really good shooters that can make really good badass YouTube videos, but they suck at instruction. They just can't relay that information. There's really good shooters and instructors that can articulate concepts really well, but they're not good at making their students feel welcomed and providing a fun learning environment so people don't go back to them. And then there's people that just have a real good time and make fun, great videos and provide really fun instruction. It doesn't mean it makes sense, and it doesn't mean that it's really I don't know. It's junk food when it comes to instruction, but people keep coming back because of their personality, and because of, so, I think the key is to doing their best to provide all of those elements. And some of that even goes back to making sure you have a viable business. Is like, there's almost always the sense to me of like, hey, if we're providing real instruction, we don't need to do these gimmicky videos, because that's what it feels like to me, and I think Brook would agree. But the reality is that if you want to bring in new people, you can give some gimmicky videos that you don't necessarily feel, it's outside of your comfort zone, but this is what you want to do for a living. So do the gimmicky videos, bring them in, and once they're there, provide them real information. It says, let me say that the other students in Getty class are great at supporting each other during the course of the day. Not all classes are like that. Lots of good job, nice shoot. Yeah, and I think that it's important, and again, not for us to take the credit, but I think just not just me, but all our instructors do a good job of creating that encouraging environment, right? We're not going to just yell at you because you're not doing well. Again, if you're not doing well, I genuinely believe, and this is where most instructors get it wrong, if a student is paying to come to a class and they are not doing well, then I genuinely believe I'm doing something wrong. And I think that is 100% true. And I am doing something wrong. I am not communicating to this student, because it is not okay for me to just have this one path of communication where I get a 90%, like so many instructors are like, oh, I'm a great instructor. 90% of my students I'm communicating with, I can get them doing what I want them to do and performing the way that I want them to perform. But there's this other 10% that I just can't reach, that don't care, that blow me off, or whatever it is. Well, no, they're not. They're not paying for a course to come there and blow you off. There's some issue there that you need to identify and work through, whether it's the way that you're communicating. Maybe it's just because they're insecure. I see that a lot, where it's hard for them to listen to you because they're insecure, or sometimes it's just, and they don't want to come across, I don't know, there's a lot of things that go on there, but there's just a lot going on, and there's lots of reasons why a student won't perform the way that they need to, but it's still the instructor's fault. And it's still, even if you think somebody's completely like, no, I'm good, I don't need you to tell me to do this, it's still your job to figure out a way to reach that student, regardless of what their attitude issue is.
That's another benefit of you having 3 or 4 of us on the range.
Yeah.
If one of us just isn't communicating, somebody else can step up. A good example is Jason's demeanor. Jason's a completely different character than the rest of us. He's the only SF guy I know who doesn't own an M4. But he has a way to definitely reach people that some of us, especially like myself, who's a more direct person, he finds a really good way to, and maybe it's just that putting them at ease and they're ready to listen.
I think that's a lot of it is Jason is, and I know, like, if we're having a student that's struggling with whatever, a lot of times I'll have Jason take them off and they'll come back a changed person. And again, just like I said, with having multiple instructors out there with really the kind of the same level of experience, that are experienced instructors that have been teaching, a long time at different agencies or for the military, whatever it is, it's funny, Brook can say one thing, and the instructors or the students someone will get it, and then I'll say the exact same thing, maybe in a different way or whatever it is, but then suddenly light bulbs go off, and vice versa, right? So it's good to have multiple subject matter experts out there. There's no doubt about it. You think it's more beneficial for someone to have their rifle that may malfunction and teach them how to fight in them or use a loaner? Well, it depends. If it's such a problem where it's becoming a training obstacle, I definitely think it's time to, because we're not there to just teach how to clear malfunctions, right? And so we want to get you through certain drills and scenarios that the takeaways from that are really important. And if you're losing training value because you're fighting through malfunctions, great example of that is long range shooting. That's one of the things that we constantly fight. And many times, and some students get pissed off at me at first, but by the end of the course, they see why. And they always will come and tell me, like, Gary, I was pissed off you made me change rifles. But, I'm like, hey, look, go get one of our rifles, use our stuff. Because when you're sitting there, if the scope's mounted wrong, or there's just weird things going on with it that we don't have time to sit there and diagnose, I'm there to teach you the fundamentals of marksmanship. We're there to teach you how to fight through wind, not how to freaking fight through shooting with a scope that's 8 degrees off, where, we're having to dial wind and then elevation and wind to get to the hit point. So no, I don't think it's beneficial for us to work through shitty equipment. We're there to train, and the other thing is to our job is to tell you, you need to sell that rifle or go throw it in the river somewhere or whatever it is.
So that's the other benefit, though. It's not only do you have a training company, you have a company that also sells parts,
Sure,
equipment, firearms. So you can plus that guy's gun up before he goes home, or have it operational by the next day if that's what they want. Because really, there's no point in owning a gun that malfunctions continuously.
And that goes with all the equipment. And that's the only reason we started carrying gear. Honestly, folks, is like, when students show up with slings that I know, I'm like, oh my God, you're going to have nothing but trouble. So I tell them off the bat, I'm like, you're going to have nothing but trouble with this or that or whatever it is. And then I let them go experience it. And then they're like, well, Gary, I was thinking about that sling you're talking, or whatever it is, right? So, having gear on hand where we can do that. But, again, the real point is to make sure that we can facilitate the training. That's really what it always comes back down to. What other comments we have? I have a distinct memory of completely missing that we were running a drill cold, intentionally loading my weapon and being the only one to fire line when shot when Gary said threat. Yeah, it happens. And again, folks, and I realize that, and that's why we're on the range and why we're shooting up against a berm is because, I'm sure, Matt, at the time your head was somewhere, you were thinking about whatever it is. And then students, they get so wrapped up in what's going on, what's in their mind, they're thinking about the last drill that we did, or whatever else. Sometimes they get pissed off when, like, I didn't hear you. Well, you're the only one on the line that didn't follow the instructions. So I don't know that it's necessarily our fault. But again, I always look at that when things like that happen. I'm like, clearly I didn't do something right. So I'm sorry. I failed you, Matt. I'll do better next time. 2-point sling all day. Single point slings turn
Adjustable.
your gun adjustable. 2-point sling. A single point sling turns your gun into a necklace, and it does nothing for you. Doesn't support the gun, and it definitely doesn't allow you to do anything else. If you need to assess a casualty, climb a ladder, do all these other things that shooters really got to think about being able to do. If you can't tighten up that sling, you have no control over it. So yeah, and then also try transitioning to a pistol with a 1-point sling, and especially if you're a dude and you get hit in the balls every time you drop that rifle. It sucks. It's silly. 1-point slings were originally designed for submachine guns. And the problem is that people saw special operations run around with 1-point slings, not understand the context of the fact that they had it on a submachine gun. And don't get me wrong, I've seen lots of SF guys or special operations guys using one. They just don't know better either. Just reality. But that's what those were for. So that when I drop that gun, I'm using that gun. It's a short sling. I push that gun out that doesn't have a butt stock. It provides a support to shoot this gun. And when I drop it, it just goes down to, right at my belt line. Whereas with a rifle, with a single point sling, I can't control it. It's flopping all over if we're doing anything other than actually hold it in my hands. What else? Yeah. So, again, what I challenge everybody out there to do is to definitely fall in love with the art of being a tactician, right? And that's what really matters. And you can do those things. I just did a video for the TV show I told you guys about. If you don't know, what channel is that on, baby? The Sportsman channel?
Sportsman channel.
So we're doing some 2-minute clips 2 and 3-minute clips for a Sportsman channel. The show is called Agents of Change. I'll be on their final episode as well, at least that's what's planned, and have a little bit more direct part in that too. But one of the videos I just did was on situational awareness and talking about practicing good situational awareness and being able to observe, analyze, and react. I always talk about OAR: observe, analyze, and react. It's like the shortened version of the OODA loop, if many of you are familiar with that. But observing your surroundings, making and analyzing what's going on in your surroundings, and then making decisions based on that analysis, right? Updating your security posture. But part of that is also being ready, mentally ready to react to situations. There's again, this is curriculum I developed for a federal agency as well, was situational awareness, surveillance detection, and things like that. And one of the videos that I had in that curriculum was during the terrorist attacks there in Paris. And there's one instance where there's this video where a terrorist walks up to a glass front, the shop that is glass. There's the shop that has a front glass, right? And he points a gun through the glass at all these people. And some people, you immediately see them they dive for cover. Several people, some of them have ended up getting shot and killed, just were trying to process they're frozen, right? So they're trying to process what's going on, and they just stand there and they freeze, and that's what we see. It's not because you don't know what to do. It's because you're not mentally prepared to process what's going on. So one of the things I always talk about is constantly playing what if scenarios in your mind. I don't care if you're in a hotel, a restaurant, hey, if somebody came this way, what would I do? And again, I always talk about that. I always make sure that I sit where I can see what's going on. I always put, Summer and the kids in front of me because it's important to have cover. So, but the point is if when you're playing these what if scenarios in your mind, it makes you ready, right? You're always switched on and you're ready to go. And the more that you do that, it goes from a conscious effort to an unconscious effort. You're constantly analyzing what's going on. You're constantly seeing what's happening. And you see so much more than 99% of the population out there. So, and that goes back to tactically, when you're doing drills, think about those different scenarios that could take place and play those what if scenarios in your mind and kind of proof those a little bit, or think about how, you would clear a room or whatever it is. But practice within when you're without. meaning, you know, practice these things even when you're not on the range or you don't have a gun in your hand. So, you know, mindset is everything.
It looks like Bending Ballistics is asking about the September 1st long range class.
What is the cost for the long range class? I believe that cost is $749 for the 2-day course, right, babe?
Yep.
$749
For level 1.
for level 1. 2 days of shooting and instruction. Talk, Mark. Yep. Where are you at? I forgot where you're at. I think you're in Kentucky, right? Mike says, I really appreciate at the mid-carbine course how Brook explained the basic concept of creating a stable shooting platform for the longer shots. 100%. And you know, that goes back to, we talk about those things. And I'm sure that even I have talked about, you know, I always talk about the concepts of stability, you know, the lower and the wider that you get. But again, that's a great example, Mike, of I definitely talk about it during long range courses. I know you've been there, Mike, but you know, again, that's another example of the way that somebody showed it, or the way that they said it, or the way that they demonstrated it. Suddenly it you know, light bulb goes off and it means something to you that it just didn't mean when you've heard it before, it was demonstrated before, whatever it is.
Had the right context that day for you to understand.
At the right context, hit you at the right time, you're in the right mental capacity, all those things. Yeah, you know, going back to our long range course, $749 for 2 days of long range shooting with what we have. You know, I think it's super cheap. Fort Campbell, Kentucky, been there. 101st. I actually miss Fort Campbell a lot. I'd love to go back out to that area, land between the lakes, and it was always nice to have Nashville close by. It's a great area, and when I was there, that was my first duty station. I was constantly looking forward to getting out of there, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to leave this place. And then I got to Fort Bragg, and then I went to Fort Lewis, so it just got worse and worse and worse.
Lewis ain't that bad.
I hated Lewis. Hated Lewis.
That's because you're a Texan.
I loved. You know, the thing is that Summer and I, we spent so much time outside. You know, between going to our parents up in Georgia, a couple hours away from Bragg. I actually liked our time at Bragg. It was, but there again,
Lewis ain't that bad when you grow up your whole entire life knowing it's going to rain on you.
yeah,
You bring 2 pairs of shoes, you bring a rain jacket, you just know it's going to suck.
feels like some people call it hopelessness. That's what I call it. Knowing I'm never going to see the sun again.
I'll give you a short story on that. So I get to Ranger Battalion.
It's already too long.
We're prepping. We show up our first day. The tab tank forwards are helping us prep all of our gear so it's within SOP. So we're tying off our load bearing equipment, all that kind of stuff. Somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, we finish up cleaning the floors that we scuffed up during our corrective measures, and we get to go to bed. So I'm laying down in a bunk in a room that's got 4 bunks in it, like 4 bunk beds. So there's at least 5 of us that now live in there. I'm sitting on my bunk, knowing I have to get up in probably an hour to get everything else ready to go. And I the whole side of that building was all the old school, like 3 foot of concrete, and everything else is glass. And the blinds were open, and the moon was shining out Mount Rainier. And I was like, this is gonna be okay. Like, we just got hazed for like whatever it was, 10 hours straight. I'm gonna get up in 2 hours and get my boots shine and all the other stuff I got to do before PT and all that. But it was gonna be okay.
Just because you could see Rainier.
Yep.
Well,
But I hadn't gone out to South Rainier to train yet, and that ruined it.
Yeah, that will ruin it.
Waking up with snow.
That terrain is just that whole area. Fort Lewis, the terrain there sucks, man. I'll tell you, like we had an infill. We jumped in and we did like I don't know, it's probably only like 15 miles, but it was the worst. It took like 24 hours. We were just going over a deadfall. It was the worst infill I've ever.
Those woods are thick. It's not like doing land nav at Benning, Georgia, where it's all nice pine needle flooring
with pathways going everywhere. You know what you just said kind of brought me back to what we were talking about too, and this is why, you know, hopefully the takeaway here that we're talking about when it comes to training or choosing who you pick to train with isn't necessarily picked with somebody necessarily with just because they have law enforcement or military experience too. Because while he was talking about, he's talking about SOPs, right? Equipment SOPs. That is a really good example of the mindset that I'm talking about. That's bad. One of the things I really enjoyed or really made sense to me in special operations is we didn't really have equipment SOPs, right? So we were lucky enough to use the mental flexibility that we had to set up our equipment as we saw fit. And this goes back to the mindset of
Pre 9/11.
this is right. This is right. This is what right looks like. Well, the way that you set up your kit or whatever else that somebody told you to do was right for somebody at some point in time in a certain situation. And that is the mindset that I'm talking about when it comes to, an SOP of this is how we do things. Well, this is how we do things in this particular situation. So, and again, I just that kind of hit me and made me think about that. But, having that flexibility mentally to understand that not all things work in all conditions, not all tactics work in all conditions. There is no perfect round or pistol or gun or rifle for every situation, right? So, having that toolbox in the back of your mind full of different tools that can be used for many different situations is really important. And there again, it goes back to that concept of filling that toolbox with as many tools and falling in love with that process as much as you do just gear or guns and all those things are great. I'm the biggest gear geek and gun geek and I love those things. I'm a materialistic son of a gun when it comes to guns and gear. There's no doubt about it. Just ask my wife back there. But I also am just as in love with the process of thinking things through, constantly think about, hey, how can I explain this concept to a student better? How can I clear this room better? How can I do all these things better? That is as fun to me as anything else.
And that shows both in the process the students see and the one that we do as instructors. Post class, we run an AAR with an after action review with all the students. Everybody gets to hit their highlight, the thing that stuck out to them most. You hand out all the critiques, so we get the positive and the negatives and make changes based on that. But then after everybody else leaves, we self-evaluate and, hey, did these processes work with the students that we had today? What do we need to do differently next time to reach this kind of student selection, so to speak? That adaptation, I guess, would be.
Yeah, no, I mean, constant self-assessment, right? So, realizing that you haven't arrived, and whether it's from the tactics or the application of those things or the explanation of those things. Brooks, I've had off days on the range where I'm talking to people and I'm not, and I can tell that I'm not explaining things right or whatever else. And, whether it's Brooke or somebody else, hopefully, we've created the environment where, and I know we have, because people come and tell me like, Gary, hey, you said this or you did this, and either that was wrong or the way they explained it was stupid, and I do the same thing with Brooke. I'm like, the way you explain that, I don't know, or whatever it is, again, even, a good example of this is we had some instructors post a video the other day and they were like, hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, ooh, there's some context missing there. So that's important to be able to, and that's another thing too, is surrounding yourself with the right people, right? So, I want people that I respect their opinions. I want them to always feel like they can come tell me where I'm wrong, and making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are moving you forward, right? So, and whatever that is, and that's something I've become very in the last 2 years, especially, and I'm not just talking about just with the business, really making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people just in life too. If there's people that are not moving in the same direction that you are, it's not that you can't be friends with them. I'm going way off tangent, but the point is making sure that you surround yourself with people that want to push you. You can be honest with them. They can be honest with you. You can receive that, folks. Being receptive to criticism, and especially when it's coming from a good place. And again, our instructors, we've all built up the relationship where we know, because we don't always have perfect days, and we don't always say things the right way. We don't do things the right way. You know, and being able to have that type of relationship is really important. Except for Summer, she always tells me I'm wrong. I should be more receptive. What else? Any other great comments up there? Gripes or complaints? Tactics and techniques and tactics are dictated by circumstances and terrain. That is absolutely correct. And again, you know, that is a concept that is definitely not talked about enough from folks. You know, I would say that teaching civilians or preparing civilians for what they could possibly come across is probably more complicated than teaching, you know, military and law enforcement. I think it's definitely more complicated than military. You know, for the most part, you have a fairly finite number of situations, and you have a much more, it's not infinite, but you have a much more time to talk through and discuss and prepare them for that, you know.
They've chosen the path that's leading them to that situation, though, versus civilian self-defense, where either your lack of self-awareness or just the fact that it was that immediate of an ambush, you didn't expect to arrive there that day.
Yeah. No. And also just there's definitely, you know, in the military, you're obviously, if you know you're in a war zone or something like that, you tend to be more mentally, physically, from an equipment standpoint, prepared. Whereas, you know, a civilian is often not. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you're carrying every day. You think about, you know, whether you're talking about weapons or anything else. Again, another video I just did on this, I need to talk about more on this channel and other things is, you know, having a PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency when it comes to weapons. You can't always carry a pistol. So you still should have some sort of weapons on you. So my pistol is no longer my primary. So now what is my primary weapon? What's my alternate, contingency, and emergency? Same thing with med gear. Same thing with, you know, communications, all of those things. And you know, again, those are things that you need to be thinking about, especially if you're going out into the woods or you're doing other things like that, or preparing for, if you want to be prepared for disasters or whatever it is, have a primary, alternate, contingency, emergencies plan for food, water, communications. All those things are things that we can be applying for that, again, just not only does it help us to be physically ready, but having that mindset and always thinking that way just helps us to be more mentally prepared as well, and more resilient, right? So that's really important as well. She is always right. There's no doubt about that. That stands for Ranger Butt Face. Is that what that is?
Resting Brook Face.
Summer calls it my RAF, my resting asshole face. So yeah, apparently.
I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, it's gotten a lot better.
My face?
Mine.
Oh yeah, no, you definitely have. This is like if this guy had met the Brooke from 5 years ago, Brooke would have been like, man, that guy's way too outgoing, way too. He's annoying.
We gotta rein that guy in.
Yeah, rein that guy
Showing
in.
too many teeth. People think that he likes them and stuff.
He laughed twice in 8 hours. Yep. All right, what other questions we got out there? Gear questions, mindset, methodology. What didn't we cover, Brooke? Again, I didn't make a bunch of notes or want to turn this into something super formal. Try to keep it as organic as possible.
There's been pretty good comments in the.
Yeah, no, it is. There's always good comments. We got thoughtful, intelligent people out there.
One of your last couple posts was talking about like you had the survival gear you were looking at reviewing, but your new job puts you traveling quite a bit, and I think since we teach pre-deployment for our agency, I think the things we teach them opens their eyes that, oh my gosh, that applies just as much every day I walk out my house than it does overseas.
Yeah.
It's more so overseas because you're losing the rapid response of law enforcement, understanding how to communicate because you might be speaking a foreign language or not speaking a foreign language, ability to communicate over there, having the natural resource or having the resources to protect yourself, make adjustments, driving on the wrong side of the road.
Be familiar with the area.
Yeah, all those things affect that mindset. But I think from having taught that, and then all your travels and having to talk with you about it, like even so, we have officers and agents that go overseas to countries that they don't get to carry their gun.
Mm-hmm.
So and then some of those countries, UK, Ireland, Dubai, you can't even have folding knives over 3 inches or whatever the requirement is now without some kind of excuse. I think London has some exemption if you have some articulable excuse for it. But thinking about what those alternatives are, that using that PACE plan, understanding how to use other things in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing the situational awareness so you have more time and distance to make good decisions to avoid it. Because that's, I mean, yeah, we're teaching you guys how to shoot in a lot of these classes, but the real thing is not to be there when it breaks.
Yeah.
Like, seeing the situation happen, and just, or potentially happening and avoiding it. I've been pretty fortunate, taking the family to Europe quite a few times. We just got back from Portugal for the last 2 weeks. My son is taller than me. Not as tall as you. But
so hold on. There's a running joke here. Brooke always talks about how tall I am, and I'm like, Brooke, he acts like I'm like 12 foot tall, but I'm like 2 inches taller than him. So it's kind of a inside joke, I guess. Now it's outside. Now it's outside.
Now it's out.
Now it's out.
So he's the same height as me, and actually he happens to now work for the same agency I do. But back the first couple times we traveled, he was in high school and college, and he grew up in the environment around us and the guys on the TAC team. So his situational awareness, or just his ability to look around and see things, came on pretty early. So the two of us looking around, we took multiple trips to countries where nobody approached us to distract us. We got legitimate sales, like, you want to buy this ice cream or whatever the case is on the beach.
Sure.
Nobody came up to us to try to pitch us anything because they didn't think they could distract us.
Right.
Counter that is a trip I took with my younger son, who's not, and we had the fake Jamaicans trying to sell us bracelets and stuff like that. And there's like 4 of them getting really close, trying to shove bracelets on you while the other guys are trying to get close to your pockets and things like that. But that situational awareness, or they're not believing that they can take advantage of your lack of awareness, is pretty big.
No, and I think, and I talk about this, there is an innate perception or detection of situational awareness, right? Like, I don't even think, and again, I talk about how, there's been lots of studies where they've studied why criminals choose the victims that they do. And what it comes down to, sometimes it's not even a conscious choice on the criminal's part, but they're choosing people that appear to be unaware. There is an innate detection, and sometimes it's not conscious or even articulable, but they can tell, and a person can tell, prey can tell when a predator can tell when prey looks unaware, and it's innate. And so, just the appearance of awareness has so much safety and security built into it, and projecting that awareness has so much safety and security built in it. You don't look like an easy target. And just like he's talking about, obviously, Brooke is somebody that when you see him, he's aware of what's going on and doesn't look like somebody that would be easily taken advantage of. But there again, when you have a kid with you that distracts you, they're distracted. So, again, when you have somebody else with you, you turn. One person can make the difference, is my point. So making sure that you're always just projecting that sense of awareness, man, there's just so much, because there's easier targets out there.
As simple as eye contact.
Yeah. And you got to be careful with that, because you don't want to just mean mug somebody, right? Like, no. That's a good way to get your ass kicked too, or targeted, or whatever else. But just letting people know that you're aware, and you actually consciously look at their face without staring at them. You don't want to stare at people. That's
a fine line.
There's a fine line.
Especially when you look like Gary and I.
So when going back to what he talks about, that pre-deployment course, I used to teach the same course and develop a lot of curriculum for that for the Department of State. And a couple of things that he touched on, what we would actually teach is a very dumbed down version of surveillance detection. So we'd take people out to malls and things like that, and we'd have people inside those areas that they were supposed to target that were doing surveillance on the students. and they were supposed to identify that. So now, for the first time in their life, they're looking around, and then they come back, and then they have to write these surveillance detection reports. And there's all these crazy things that they start reporting. I'll never forget. There was one lady who was like, "Oh my God," because it was only like 2 hours long, right? Number one, they come back exhausted, literally exhausted after 2 or 3 hours of walking around the mall or wherever we have, because for the first time in their life, they're putting effort into looking at their surroundings. It's mentally exhausting. Number two, they come back to like, there was so much weird stuff going on, and that stuff is going on all the time. It's just the first time that you've noticed
Seen
it.
Yep.
So, yeah, making sure that you're aware that there's so, and again, it's all these little things like that. There's so much into the, and Brooke and I can talk about all these things because we're into that stuff, and we're into not only knowing it and making sure that we practice it, but teaching people as well and sharing that. So, again, there's a lot behind shooting a gun or being tactically aware, having security awareness, and all these other things that is just, it's a lot of fun, right? You can get into it, you can become a student of it. And that's what we want to create with our channel, with Paramount Tactical as a training company. I'll put a shiny gun or flashlight that's cool looking on an end of a string, get you here. But as soon as you get here, at the end of the day, guns and gear is great, but what we're really about is training. So, making sure that you're thinking about that, and hopefully we're putting that message out there effectively. Oh, no, no, no. So that range out there, right out my back door, I built it so that I'd have a place to test guns, make sure guns are zeroed and things like that. Uh, I have, my property is unrestricted, but I still have neighbors nearby. And the last thing I'm gonna do is go out there and start blasting. Folks, I hope that one day, when the timing is right and the place is right, we will have a world-class shooting facility. But we'll see. There's also a lot of downside running a shooting range or having a facility, man. Especially with so much going on politically, and there's been a thing in the last few years where you have these anti-gun liberals specifically targeting, throwing out all kinds of unbased complaints and lawsuits and all these other stuff, because that's what you have here at the range down the road from us. Peacemaker, I'll just tell you what it is. Beautiful facility. Used to be ran by a complete douchebag, but I digress. But the point is that there were lots of people trying to shut him down, and what happened was they were just throwing out these fraudulent lawsuits. Well, these lawsuits are being funded by George Soros types, but people that are anti-gun, right? So you can win a lawsuit and fight back on that and still end up completely broke. And that's what they were trying to do with a lot of these gun ranges, and that was happening nationally. I heard about that from a lot of different, especially the bigger facilities. They were targeting those specifically. So
it's like the sriracha effect or the airport effect. They get this cheap property next to the airport, and then they complain about the airport noise, and they cut the hours of the airport or the smell of the sriracha plant in California.
I didn't know that was a thing in California.
Yeah, it was a big plant, obviously, for that. And,
is that why there's a sriracha shortage?
I don't know. No, this was.
There's literally a sriracha shortage.
There's a shortage of everything right now. But
It's
they bought this cheap property in front of the sriracha plant. Of course, it has a weird smell.
Mm-hmm.
And then they complained about it and got the plant shut down, even though it was there first. But it happens quite frequently on the airports.
Mm-hmm.
They get the cheap property on the exterior of it, and then they complain about the noise so that it gets restricted to only daytime flights or whatever the case may be. But
yeah,
think about spending millions of dollars to develop a world-class range and then have all that going on.
Yeah, you gotta be careful about that. What's the story behind the 2 Bravo logo? Yeah, so a couple things there. Number one, give them your Instagram handles for those out there.
All right, so 2 Bravo Solutions _ between the words on Instagram. There's a Brook Bowen 2B on Facebook and a 2 Bravo Solutions on Facebook. That's the only places I'm. There is a YouTube channel. Don't bother going there. There's like 3 videos I had to put up there for reviews. So the logo, Mike, it has a lot of reflection back to when I left high school and joined the Army. I got indoctrinated pretty well in the Rangers. And if you pay attention to Ranger history, we're from the beginning of our country. So the diamond is a representation of my time in Rangers. The two hatchets are back to that beginning of Rangers and the Revolutionary War. If you look at the shape, they're shaped the way that they are back then. And obviously 2 Bravo is for Brook Bowen. That's it.
Double B.
Go buy a hat, Mike.
Hey, Summer, throw up if you just want to type his Bravo Solutions up on a 2 Bravo Solutions, or give that information again.
Thanks for asking, Mike. I appreciate it.
We'll throw that up on a banner so that you guys can see that, or throw it in the comments, something like that. Yeah. We also got a couple of comments out here. I wish we could succeed in mass and start back at the Constitution. That'd be great. I'll have Summer throw that up. She's doing something else. I have her doing 10 things. She needs to work harder, faster. Wish we could succeed in mass and start back at the Constitution. That'd be great. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and folks, we've never been more under attack than we are now, getting hit, from our own government and from this administration in particular. Whether we're talking about gun rights, whether we're talking about the economy, man, it's frustrating to see, and it's frustrating to see people support it and not. To me, there's a pretty clear objective of what's going on, and maybe people support that objective. Whether we're talking about gas prices, again, by design, it'd be real easy to get these gas prices down. Don't tell me some nonsense that a president can't control gas prices, because they can. When they're shutting down refineries left and right, they can definitely, and shutting down pumping, shutting down our own production of energy.
Sending the reserves that we opened up overseas.
Sending our own national reserves to China and Europe. That's pretty nuts.
Thanks, Summer.
Any final gripes, complaints, questions about anything? I think we're at an hour and a half here. We appreciate everybody's time. Look, Brooke, appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. We're definitely gonna do something. We're gonna try to do these more regular, whether it's every Friday, or we're gonna continue doing something every Friday. I do have some really good guests lined up. We don't have all we have is tentative dates. So we got some pretty cool guests lined up for that. I do want to start doing more of these types of discussions, maybe just within instructors, maybe outside of even doing Fridays. Maybe we'll do more of a podcast. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I only have so much time in the day. I'm trying to squeeze more and more stuff in all the time, and get better and better, and be more efficient at some of these things, so that we can do, produce more content and reach more people. That's what it's all about. What I will say is, again, folks, we really appreciate all of your support. And, I can't tell you enough, whether it's just going on our channel, subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing our courses, sharing the stuff that we talk about. Folks, that goes a long way. I mean, that is literally exponential every time that you share a video, or share the link to one of these or something like that. I mean, it goes a long way. And I know not everybody's comfortable with doing that, and I don't expect you to, but we appreciate it when you do. And it means a lot to us, and it helps us more than you can realize. Also, purchasing things through us, we really appreciate that. And again, if there's ever a time where you see something cheaper somewhere else, let us know, and we will try to do the best to take care of you. There again, that goes a long way. We have a Patreon and all those things, and there's some people on here that actually donate to our Patreon. We appreciate that. But what does more for us, or just as much, as sharing our content, telling people about us, if you've been to our courses or even our YouTube channel or whatever it is. And then, we want to be your main source for guns, gear, everything else. We plan to grow this company, and we need your help to do it. You are on the ground level. You are our ambassadors, and we appreciate that. What else, Brooke? Any final thoughts?
No, thanks for getting me out of my shell.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But maybe having a couple of us on here.
Yeah, no, we definitely.
All you alumni, post some topics you want us to hit, because that's probably the hardest part, is coming up with, hey, what do you want to cover?
Yeah,
and you guys want to listen to. I mean,
well, they don't know. That's the problem.
Gary and I have a lot of great conversations. It just
nobody knows what they want to listen to. They don't know what they want to listen to. It's like you don't know until you hear it. But no, I think getting 2 or 3 of us on here would be a lot of fun. I don't know how much productivity. I don't know how productive it'll be, but it'll be at least
Depends on
entertainment.
who you
That
pick.
might just be complete entertainment.
No, it'd be entertainment. There's no training.
Oh,
in that.
okay,
Just
okay.
all 100%
We'll throw it a nugget in. I'll make
Okay.
Jason show us how to put a tourniquet on or something.
Plus, my Ken got to see a different side of me than my.
Yeah, folks.
face.
I've been on this very long road of trying to make Brooke a better person, and I'm clearly succeeding. You're welcome. You're welcome. We're gonna hug after this. Anyways, folks. Again, we always appreciate having you out here. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate the support. Again, we're here for you. If there's anything you need, any questions, whatever it is, send it our way. So until next time, stay armed, stay ready, and have a great weekend.